people know me as a mixer, not also as a writer producer. But look who was my mentors: Teddy Riley, Rodney Jerkins, Brian Michael Cox, Robin Thicke. These are the guys that I learned from. But the other thing that we never tapped in on is why Teddy picked me, because I was a musician first. He met me as a guitar player / engineer, but I was only an assistant. And that's why he took me on, because he wanted that rock sound to be in New Jack Swing. He wanted his drums to hit harder than ever before, and that's when we started working together.
But because you talk about that rock sound, but was that something that Michael, because it seems that Michael wanted to do something to push Teddy out of his comfort zone when it came to, the stuff that he was doing with, say, Dave Way in the past?
Well, you have to understand, if it wasn't for Dave Way, I wouldn't have that gig with Teddy. He was between Teddy and Dave. They were saying Dave was actually going to stay in Los Angeles. He really took a liking to it, and he wanted to move on. And Teddy said, well, who are we going to use now? He goes, well, what about that kid that we met?
That kid.
that was on the New Jack City soundtrack, which was the Let's Chill. Let's Chill was supposed to be through Keith Sweat. And that's how I met Teddy, as on the Keith Sweat session. And Teddy thought I was an engineer, and I was just basically a runner. And he didn't know that, but he heard a practice session. Basically, how I met him, I was playing the guitar. I think I told you this before.
Yeah.
And I think a couple of days later, he goes, I went to the room, and he's working with Keith, programming with Bobby Wooten and the company. And Teddy came in there and just totally crushed it, like he always did. And he said, I said, I'm ready to take your order, going to Carnegie Dell. He goes, you going? Wow, that's really nice of you to go there. I said, no, I'm the runner for the night. And Teddy said, what? But you're mixing in the other room. And then Teddy went into my room, and that's when he found out. He said, I want that sound. And I didn't know what the hell I was doing now. Not even one iota. And that's how it happened. And that's how I started working with Teddy. Because of that moment, 7 months later, and I still remember this, it was in May. I think it was either somewhere in the middle of May, because I went on the Guy tour in June. So it was in May, because I just started working that May. So the following May, so it was 1 year to the date that I started working with Teddy. And that's when we did the Dog Me Out remix, Let's Stay Together remix, Stay, no, Tease Me Tonight. Was it Tease Me Tonight? One of the other remixes. And then we were starting on Wreckx-N-Effect. And then he said, I want you to come with me to Japan. And I said, well, I don't know how to do live sound. He goes, no, you're just going to do my sound. So basically, I was working with him on the road, and also at night we were moonlighting for Michael. So we would do all the stuff during the day, and then at night we would do all the Michael Jackson stuff. We were burnt out, but that was my introduction into like 24-hour sessions with Teddy, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
But is this what you wanted, or did you know what to expect when when it comes to being an engineer and mix it to that this is that it could be as busy as this?
I didn't know what to expect, but all I knew, I wanted it. And the only vice that I had at that time was smoking cigarettes. Teddy hated that shit. He hated that. He said, oh, you smoke cigarettes, but that's what kept me going, though I thought so. But after I left Virginia Beach, I changed my lifestyle, and I went to a healthier way, because Teddy was one of many hats. Teddy would be the writer, the producer, the organizer, the production coordinator, the musician, the orchestrator. Teddy was everything. He was also my partner in crime when we were mixing. I became a great mixer because I was a better listener. And I listened to my mistakes, and I listened to the stuff that Teddy was doing. So when me and Teddy would be mixing, it would be one up. like we would try to one up each other. And actually, Teddy gave me my first remixer credit on Remember the Time. I was one of the remixers. I was programming, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing there either. And Teddy gave me that blessing.
Which version of it? You know, there was
It's all the remix versions of Remember the Time. So it's like I did a drum thing, but you know, when Teddy did remixes, it was just not one remix. When you get a Teddy Riley remix, it was always 5 or 6 of them. Teddy was very instrumental in my career, and I always will love him for that. And I love him to death. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you saw the video of he was in the studio with Bruce Swedien. They were doing "She Drives Me Wild."
Mm-hmm.
Were you in that? Were you there at the time? Because there's a video that's just been just leaked around that has
with Bruce with the what's it oh god, who was the producer that he was saying that to?
But I don't know if it's a producer or some guy who was filming, and I think he was Michael's videographer. But Teddy's there doing. I don't really know. It was "It Drives Me Wild." He was just doing it on a vocoder. But Bruce Swedien was there in the studio.
We at that time, you know what? I'm not too sure what time frame that was. That was probably maybe earlier on before I got there. It's probably when Dave Way was there. But a lot of times Teddy would be jumping from studio to studio, and I would be in one studio. Then Bruce Swedien would be at record one, and we would have Larrabee, all the Larrabee rooms. And when I left Teddy, Larrabee was my home ground for quite so many years. And then I went to Soundcastle.
But this was during the Michael Jackson stuff, and this was it was the "She Drives Me Wild" track.
Yeah, but you have to understand, I came in the tail end of the mixing project.
Oh.
Yeah, I was coming in the tail end.
But your name is all over all the 7 tracks that Teddy did, so there was no Dave Way.
Yeah, you're damn right I was. I came in there and put my foot in it. I wasn't even supposed to be on that record. I was supposed to be a technical advisor for Teddy. And it was because I did a slave mix for Jam. And it was Renee Moore's song. And I didn't know Renee Moore was coming in that day. I remember we just flew in from Japan. We went to see Bruce that night. Michael came in. I didn't even know that was Michael. He had a hat on. I didn't even know who the hell he was. Sweetest man. He was such a sweet man. He really, really, really was. He was really a sweet man. All that stupid stuff that's on there. No one really knew the intelligence and how wonderful of a human being he really, really was. You know what I'm saying? So, but to get back to the way I got on the record was I met Bruce that night. The next day, there was a 10 o'clock session because Teddy and Bruce and Michael like to work from 10 o'clock, which I think is an amazing thing to do.
10 p.m.
No, 10 a.m.
Oh,
they work from 9 to 5 or 10 to 6.
Oh, so the regular time, so not
That's Michael's times. Then it's our time is from 10 o'clock in the morning till probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. But we would have to be there by 10 o'clock for Michael. So the next day, Teddy had to do overdubs on Jam. And back then, when we didn't have Pro Tools back then, so we would have to make slaves of tape machines and like analog tape. So Teddy and I devised the plan, or I think he kind of devised it with Dave Way at some point, where we would mix all the stuff, do a kick drum, snare, stereo percussions, bass, keyboards, and then we would track it and then we fly it down there, right? And Teddy wanted me to put my 2 cents on it because we were developing a sound. And Renee Moore was like saying, "What are you doing?" You know, I said, "I'm Renee." Is this? I said, "Well, I'm mixing the slave thing so Teddy can hear it, so we can keep going." And he said, "Let me hear what you got." And I don't know what I did. I just made that thing jump from start to finish. And then Renee went out, and all of a sudden Renee comes walking in with Bruce, Michael, and Teddy, and Teddy's smiling from ear to ear. And Renee said, "Man, play that." And I'm grooving. At that time, I always was grooving, and you know, not to make fun of Michael, but I was like right there, and I said, "This thing is jamming, right?" And Michael looked at me and said, "Are you Italian?" I said, "No, I'm Croatian." And that was the biggest joke of the day. And then Bruce gave me the blessing. He said, "Give him all the tapes." And that's how it all began. And I love Bruce for that. So
Yeah.
Bruce got me on the record, but Teddy knew offhand that he wanted me to be on the album, because we were developing something, and it kind of trickled on. Like the mixes that we gave to Bruce were a little bit more heavy-handed. Like the 808s were a little bit more pedantic with jam. It's like that, right? That little section, and then you hit it, boom, boom. Our 808 was more trunk rattling, and when we got back to mixes, it was more tamed. But I have to respect it, because remember, we were doing pop, and Teddy really wanted to push the envelopes at that time. Teddy's sounds, all the sounds that were on Michael Jackson Dangerous album, was all brand new sounds that no one had. Teddy developed those sounds, and he had a meeting with Michael, and he could have got away with this. He couldn't do the Michael Jackson stuff or the Michael Jackson sound for, say, a New Edition, or Jane Child at that time, or even Blackstreet for all that matters, because Joy, the original Joy that was done by Michael, was totally different from the Joy that you would hear now. So when Michael did Joy, it sounded like She's Out of My Life. It was beautiful. Even the original version of Someone Lay Your Hand Out was absolutely extraordinary. But when they brought it back, like Blackstreet got Joy, and then I think Someone Lay Your Hand Out came out on the History record, I believe. I'm not too sure. Yeah. Those were totally done differently, because it was actually almost like a remix type thing. But I no, it was Blood on the Dance Floor. That's right.
Blood on the Dance Floor.
Yeah. So Someone Lay Your Hand Out, I don't think no one brought that back. That song was probably one of my favorite songs that never made it on Michael's record.
Now, so when I interviewed Rodney Darkchild, he was saying that he thought that if Michael had allowed you and Teddy, to handle the mixing, that it would have had the richest sound, very similar to the Bobby album, because that's my favorite production of you guys. There was just that, but he felt that, with Bruce and the others in there, it sort of, I don't say watered down, because a lot of us were sort of like disappointed.
Rodney's absolutely right. Rodney, a lot of people don't understand the geniuses of certain producers and what we have to respect. And I'm gonna say it right on the table. Rodney Jerkins is nowhere near Teddy, but a great reflection, because Rodney Jerkins is great. He is an amazing writer. You cannot compare the two. I don't care how much Rodney learned from Teddy. Rodney had his own sound, which made it absolutely phenomenal to work with. When I worked with In Depth, I worked with Teddy. I worked with Rodney, really close. Rodney had a different ear, because Rodney's ear was subjected to the time and the movement of Rodney Jerkins. That's what makes Rodney so special, because he wasn't catering. He might have adapted a few things from the great Teddy Riley, but it was Rodney Jerkins to the point. And that's why Rodney got that Michael record of the Invincible record. I still think he should have finished it off. I think Rodney should have finished up the final mixes and all like that. But he's right. Rodney's right. The mixes that on Dangerous would have been a lot different. But would have been the great thing for it No one can really say, because we're dealing with a different type of animal. We're dealing with the biggest pop star in the world.
Yeah.
You know, even like the crazy media exposure that, whether it was good or bad, he was still Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson had his own sound, just like Rodney and Teddy have their own sound. But with Rodney, there's a special, like, I have a special love for my big brother Teddy. I will always love him. But then you have my little brothers like, you know, Rodney Jerkins, B. Cox, you know, Pro J from, you know, James Gass from Robin Thicke's camp. There's so many great producers. One of my favorite producers still to this day is D Miles, which is a product of Rodney's camp. And he is probably one of the most prolific producers that we have right now. I think he might be the next Quincy Jones, if you ask me, because he has such an in-depth ear. You know, he's really, really talented. And and I love his engineer named John Kersey. He's really, really, really talented. He came out the box talented because they come from the same cloth that we all come from. We're a bunch of musicians making great music or trying to make great music. And I think D Miles doesn't cater to the sound of what's now. He's going to the sound of tomorrow, just like Rodney does all the time. Rodney's doing stuff right now that's absolutely amazing. Teddy's doing stuff right now that's supposed to come out relatively soon. They're all talented. I think, but going back to your original question about Rodney saying it would be different, he's right. It would have been the rough mixes that I would, if I could find them. I can't find them because everything was still in locked vaults. Man, them motherfuckers were jumping. Like our snares were killing. Michael's voice was right there. I was developing a sound. And you have to understand, when we did those mixes, we didn't do the initial tapestry of those mixes in LA. We did them down at Virginia Beach, and that room was special, man. That Teddy's room down in Virginia Beach was probably one of my favorite friggin' rooms I've ever worked in. Literally my favorite room. And then when I went back down there to work with Teddy on some I Get So Lonely remixes and the Queen Pin stuff, the room was changed. I guess he did a facelift on it, and it just sounded like ass. And then he had that 9000, that J9000, the J board I did not like in that room. And he hated it as much as I did because it cleaned up the sound. The SSL back then, he had, I think, either a 6000 or a 4000. I think it was a 6000. But it was an amazing sounding console.
It's probably, as a fan, we did notice after the Bobby and the Bob album, the sound coming out of Future just wasn't as rich, and it couldn't keep up with what's happening out in the market. It felt like the sound,
Teddy won't say it, but he said it to somebody. He said, after Jean-Marie left, everything changed, because became more of there was a lot of politics that was going down there, and I'm not into politics. Listen, I'm a street kid from Jersey City, and I was raised differently. We didn't care about the tone of your skin. We cared about the integrity of the man. It's a street code, you know what I'm saying? So I don't go for that bullshit. I never did. And Teddy knew that. And when I left, I talked to Donna and his children, and they said that Teddy really, really missed me. And I really missed him also. I want to stay in Virginia Beach. I loved it down there because all we did was music. But then the other elements came in. It just caused a lot of friction. And Teddy at that time had so much stuff going on. So he was hearing all this different type of stuff, and it just made things really difficult for us to do our job. But you're right. After I left, it changed. A lot of stuff changed.
Yeah, and I think as I said, we can only go as fans, and we noticed the music change, and unfortunately at that time there was the Dre West Coast sound, Death Row sound, or Aftermath sound, and then it was the Diddy type of sound, and I think almost Teddy, without some guidance, was stuck in the middle of like, which way do I go? Instead of staying in his lane, which was being an innovator, and I think we as fans started, we read the whole thing, like who's engineering this, and who's working around that, and we can tell that it wasn't up to stuff, and we weren't big fans of stuff he did with Not a Butter, Not a Butter, or the David Miller. It was almost like, well, it was so we could tell that there was a sound change, and that sort of consistency, which you probably might see with, say, a Timbaland or a Jermaine Dupri. They still had the same type of people around, and a consistent sound. I don't know how Timbaland just came from nowhere and just he just became his sound just took over. And then Pharrell, who was under Teddy, the Neptunes go in and come up with a consistent sound, and that was where we felt disappointed as hardcore Teddy fans.
Well, I think a lot of it also had to do with Teddy had a tug of war, man. He was becoming a label at that time, and to get the best work out of Teddy, he needed to stay focused in the music, but he was also an executive, and he also had like many people underneath him on his label. When you're dealing with artists of that caliber, you need to focus in. And I think Teddy was trying to also put his stamp of artistry to the other artists there that really kind of consumed the business side. And I think that I can't confirm it though, because Teddy's a genius. I don't care what anybody says. He's still a genius. I just think that we didn't catch up to his genius as of yet. He's light years, so he might have, we kind of might misinterpret Teddy Riley of the old, not accepting Teddy Riley of the new. And if we probably go back maybe 10, 15 years later down the road, we'll say, holy shit, Teddy did it again, but we weren't up to the ear. He's that much of he's like a Dr. Spock, man. He goes out. He's out there, man. He's out there.